Welcome back and thank you for staying tuned. Now let's get into the discussing youth engagement in politics. And joining me is David Nwokori, who is the president and executive director of Gender Foundation. He joins me live in the studio. He's quite a brilliant and vibrant young man, and like I said, we are going to be discussing about Nigerian youth, so it's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure is mine,
David. We're glad to have you. Before we begin, I'm just getting to know that you launched a book, or you're an author. That's interesting, and I haven't seen before. The next move is quite I must say it's a very big one. Congratulations to you.
Thank you,
Mercy.
Thank you.
Well, and again, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
All right, let's first of all, let me get your assessment or your analysis on how the engagement of the youths in Nigerian politics in general.
You mean politically? Or
yes, politically, involvement, nation building, development. How would you assess Nigerian youth so far, especially under this current administration?
Well,
has there been any form of improvement? Are the youth beginning to, are they beginning to get more informed? Are they beginning to play important roles, vital role in nation building?
Well, I think if you look at it from both ways, the government has rolled out a lot of innovative initiatives to be able to persuade young people, for them to engage more in these initiatives. And I believe that the administration is also creating an enabling environment for youth across different sectors with innovative ideas, to come closer, to collaborate with the federal government. And I also know that ministries like Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, Ministry of Digital Communications have spearheaded a lot of youth related initiatives in the last 1.5 years. Roughly 2 years now, to see that young people are brought on board. So from the perspective of the government, I can say that a lot has been done. We don't know how impactful that has been in terms of accessing it on a general level. We don't know, especially at the grassroots level, but we believe that that is for the state government. A lot of state governors are also taking on initiatives, but beyond the conventional empowerment, programs, beyond the conditional cash transfer, beyond the donation of gift items and laptops, I believe that as the presiding officer of an organization that is very much invested in youth interest, not just in Nigeria but across the continent, I expect that the government should carry out more impactful initiatives in the sense of young people not just receiving grants and fund, but seeing what young people can do with this fund in order to create an enabling environment for other young people to come on board. So it's not just about what is being done, it's about what is being perceived to be done. But from the angle of the youth, I believe that it is left for young people. I've been on your show a couple of times and I would say it again, the responsibility behoves on the youth to actually take that bold step and that bold leap. I took time to document some very important issues in that book, and especially regarding politics and the fact that the argument about marginalization and all, it's perpetual. It will continue 50 years after now. I bet you we will still be talking about youth inclusion. But
why so?
That's where I'm heading to. It is the responsibility of younger people, aspiring leaders, to run towards their political goals and political dreams, to educate themselves, try to be more aware of what is happening around them, especially at the community level, at the grassroots level. They should be able to ask important questions. I think young people are not asking important questions. Young people are rather complaining.
So what do you think are those important questions that you think the youth are supposed to be asking?
Important questions like education, quality education for young people, job creation, the proliferation of hubs, innovative hubs, technological hubs, skill acquisition
I'm
hubs.
sorry to cut you there. I heard you mention instead of complaining, but don't you think the environment is quite hostile enough for the youth to complain? Don't you think so?
Hostile, the more hostile, in fact the hostile environment is a perfect recipe for activism and for inquisition. So the more hostile an environment is, for instance, if you are kept in a room, you find you wake up and perhaps you were unconscious and you find yourself in a room that is walled end to end and there's no escape route. Of course your mind starts working. It works so fast. After shouting and shouting and shouting and nobody listens to you, then you start thinking of something to do. Hence, you see the title of that book is called Before the Next Move. You start thinking of something to do. There has to be an action that can create change. So without an action, and not just any kind of action, beyond protests and beyond calling the government out, how can young people engage amongst themselves by forming pockets of networks, building a nexus where they can share ideas amongst themselves, build their collective strength and be able to help themselves amongst themselves first, and that way when resolutions are being made amongst young people, then the government can take them more seriously. That is one step. For instance, what we do at the Gender Empowerment Foundation is to engage with regional and international organizations with thematic areas that we feel young people are really affected. For instance, in drug abuse, in sustainable development, in enterprise and innovation, to see, and also in political inclusion, civic duty and inclusion, to see how some of these regional organizations can engage with our foundation, right? To see how the needs of young people are met in these respective categories. So as a youth, I saw a problem, and the least that I can do is to play my own role by setting up institutions and liaising with existing institutions whose mandate it is to address issues that are related to young people. And that way we are solving the problem of drug abuse amongst young people. We are creating more awareness around sustainable development goals amongst young people within the country. We are giving political education. For instance, by the end of the first quarter of 2025, our foundation is unveiling a novel initiative called the African Youth Leadership Center. This leadership center is a school of policy making and governance for aspiring leaders, for youth, for young people, because we see the disenchantment, the disconnection, the disillusion amongst young people. They are unaffected and apathetic about government and governance, but more importantly, some of them lack fundamental knowledge of our history. How did we get here? How did we build to become a very solid and fearful, global democracy as a country? But which and what leadership lessons do we need to learn as youth to be able to overcome the shortcomings of the present generation of leaders? And so at the moment we are engaging with regional organizations within West Africa, like the ECOWAS Youth and Sports Development Center, like the United Nations Educational, Social and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, like the African University Incubation incubator ecosystem, to see how the African Youth Leadership Center is launched to create more political awareness among young people and also to promote youth inclusion. So all I'm saying in essence is that young people should take decisive actions rather than speaking at the problems. They should work towards solving the problems by coming together, and building a network. So overall, I think the political engagement is improving, but there's still a lot more work to be done.
All right, viewers, at this point, I'll allow you to join the conversation. So our phone lines are now open for you to call in to give your own contribution. All right, David, now as the founder and president of Gender Foundation, I heard you when you spoke about the youths not paying so much attention in politics, but a lot of times some people have argued that we can see clearly, even in the House of Representatives, the Senate, we can see older people than the younger ones. So is it the youth that are not that aren't fully ready, or there is those youth are not given the privilege, or there is no fair ground for them to get into politics?
Well, the global statistics, I think globally less than 5% of youth generally aged under, about 5% of youth aged under 30 are in parliament on a global scale. So the average age for parliamentarians globally, roughly about 48, 50 around the world. It's not a Nigerian thing, first off. But we see few exceptions to that pattern. I won't call it a rule or a norm. It wasn't set. No rule. There's no such rule to that pattern. So again, you see that about the same scale for women. Globally, you see that representation for women is on an average of about 15% on a global scale. So, but how did that minority that you see in the House of Reps, there are people aged 30, there are people aged 31 in the current House of Representatives, today.
We even have 38 in the Senate. I think the one from Cross River.
Cross River. Yes, we have, I think it's about 40 now, by the way. Both, I believe it is about perception. It's about personal conviction and tenacity and the will for you to pursue. I would not rule out that in a country like Nigeria, a lot of resources is required, not just financially. A lot of network is required. It's become increasingly clear that we live in a country where vision is not just enough, passion is not just enough, intelligence is not just enough. We've seen the setback that the current president of the African School of Governance, I think Kingsley Moalu, a very fine erudite academic, the likes of the embattled emir of Kano.
Forgive me, give me a moment. We have someone here. Let's listen to the. Hello, it's a pleasure to have you join us on the show. Your name and where you're calling us from?
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
All right.
So, youth engagement in politics is your topic of discussion for today. Yeah?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So, let me share my perspective based on this.
Okay.
This is the area where I salute this Tinubu administration.
Okay.
For giving youth opportunity. If you look at some of the ministers are useful in appearance. They are very useful. Their brain is functioning, and they are doing very well with cabinet. So these are one area that can really appreciate the Tinubu administration.
Okay.
Because if you look at some of the ministers, even though some are old and aging, but some are youth, there is no government since the return of democracy in 1999. I read it because I don't know 1999. Actually, I don't know the time. I am in kindergarten. So this administration, it gives opportunity for the youth.
Okay.
Because the major problem we are facing in this country is youth, lack of employment in the youth. Majority of the youth are unemployed. Some of them are frustrated. So that is why they are committing a heinous crime. But this administration, when it comes on board, they decide the all odds.
Okay.
He appoints some of the youth. He gives them opportunity, and they are doing well.
All right. Okay.
So we really appreciate for that, and we are going to see more.
All right.
Given opportunity for the youth.
Okay.
When you look at, I can remember during RFI administration when he was a governor in Kaduna State, majority of his commissioners are youth, even 25 years, 24 years, and they use very wonderful performance.
All right, thank you very much, and you have to round up your thought. Thank you for your contribution. We really do appreciate. Yes, thank you, and have a great evening. All right, David. Sorry, you were saying something. Please go ahead.
Okay, so following my line of thought, I was trying to explain why intelligence, passion, dreams, and goals is not just enough in the political space. There always has to be an end factor, an extra factor, and that extra factor is the grit, the tenacity, the gaminess and spunkiness, and that push and drive to be able to scale through the obstacles and the challenges. So just like the women cry for marginalization, the youth cry for marginalization as well. But like I said, it's been a long time that young people have been complaining at the problem. You know, you want to run, you pick up a form, you seek support. You fail,
but looking at their mouth that these forms are sold, how convenient do you think it is for the youth to be able to afford them? As at last year, I think APC form was over 100 million.
You mustn't be a member. You mustn't be a member of APC and PDP for you to stand up.
These political parties I'm talking about.
I understand.
Form, you see
I understand.
I
understand, but not every political party charges 100 million naira for a form, and that is why I said, I mean, instead of going into a political party and having to scramble for space, I'm going to go to a point, but before I get there, start up with the movement. Let your voice be heard. I mean, it is in that process that you're able to learn, and that you're able to grow, and that you're able to understand the rudiments of politicking and politics. Everybody understand his or her constraint, right? And I know that there are young people who grew up to the political ladder with no dime in the pocket. I do not want to join this argument. I don't want
going to be a very tough one.
No. It happens on a daily basis. But I do not want to join this argument that as a young person, it is impossible for you to add value. You mustn't add value by picking up the form of a political party. Before you run for an elected position, of course you can be appointed. I mean, there's so many SSAs and SAs under the government and administration of His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And there are organizations like the City Boy movement, for instance, which is fast spreading across the 6 geopolitical zones and 36 states of Nigeria. It is an organization that has been set up to create a platform for young people. You know, it is a movement that has several departments and several units, essentially to build and to groom aspiring leaders. Beyond being a platform for the promotion of the progressive ideals of the president, it is also an opportunity for young people to have an insight into what happens or what drives the policies, rather, what drives the policies of the current administration, who is behind it, what is the metrics, what is the threshold and the benchmark for evaluating these policies and the impact that it has. But more importantly, it gives a youth, an average Nigerian youth from whichever part of the country that you are from, an opportunity to be part of those policies and to even profile policies yourself that could be adopted, by the government. But and by that way, you are being informed and you are being involved in the political process, but not necessarily in an elected position, as you see. So movements like this, when you look at the likes of Malcolm X of this world, and the likes of Martin Luther King, and Frederick Douglass, and all of those names that stand out in the course of history, who stood for one particular thing or the other, whether it was civil rights movement or it was you look at the likes of Susan B. Anthony, for instance, who fought for the girl rights in the 19th century, women's rights in the 19th century. They were always part of movement, one movement or the other, whether political or apolitical. But in the current country and society that we live in, it is important for you to identify organizations that are worthwhile, that have solid structures. The City Boy movement, for instance, has a structure at the local government level, at the state level, at the federal level. So whether you are in Etiosa or you're in Ikot-Ekpene or you're in Sapele, wherever you are, you can always identify a contact point and say, I want to join, I want to undertake so and so project in my community. I want this movement to be part of it and support me. And of course they will. So all politics is local, as you know, and it has to start from somewhere. So before you get to the point where you want to pick up a form to run for president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, first of all, go ask those people who are picking up forms how they were able to pick up forms. These are people that have been either in the public or private sector for decades. So they did not just become 50 or 40 or 35 overnight. So you should also look for a political party that you can afford the form. If you can buy in ZPP, go to ZPP and run under ZPP, run and lose. But when you run and lose,
so what's the essence of running when you already know that you're going to, when you eat, it feels like, or you have this belief that you're going to lose?
I'm not saying that necessarily you have to lose. I mean, there has been exceptions to the norm. SDP, YPP, even Zenith Party has won elections in recent times. All I'm trying to say is that in losing doesn't necessarily mean that you're a failure.
You're a loser.
You have learned from the process. Even APC, there are times when you see candidates of the PDP when PDP was in power, they lost elections. Even a sitting president lost an election in this country. But the important part is the process. And again, I want to attack it from this point of young people despising the process and paying more attention to the end product. You have to go through the crucibles. You cannot escape that. You have to be politically aware and educated and informed, and that is what qualifies you to be able to demand and hold the government accountable in terms of giving you quotas, in terms of giving you an opportunity to run on a political platform and taking up leadership positions. But political education equips you as a leader. So who do you want to lead when you're not politically educated and inclined? So exposure and awareness, as I've said, and I'll reiterate again, comes from being a part of networks and movements and organizations, meeting people, rubbing minds, learning from them, from their experiences, especially those who are up there, who have been there, those who are retiring, and even young people like yourself.
Okay, now, looking up to people just like you've brought up is quite fantastic. But let's take a look at what is going on in Rivers State between footballer and his predecessors. Do you think this will in future, damage godfatherism, or do you even think, in the long run, godfatherism should be encouraged? And do you think it's fruitful?
I don't know what you mean by godfatherism. I only know that Catholics have they have godfathers and godmothers, if that's what you mean. But
in politics, there is godfatherism, and we can see what is playing out in River State.
There is.
Are you asking me? Actually,
okay. So if godfatherism means what I think it is, it means. All I know is that at the moment, a political decision has been taken out of necessity to forestall peace and order in River State, and I also know that the both parties are working towards, and of course concerned parties are working towards an amicable resolution of whatever crisis. But all that we are praying, especially for young people, Rivers has always been a hostile, very hostile environment. I remember as far back as 2728 when Celestino Mejia and Chibika Mechi had that contention for the governorship. After Mejia Supreme Court reversed the decision, there was a lot of hostility then. I remember when people have to raise their hands up when they are passing through some police checkpoints, and you hear issues of bullets flying up and down and all that. So Port Harcourt has always been a hot zone, but I'm hoping that all of these issues will be resolved amicably, regardless of the speculations whether one party wants to influence the other. The end point is that peace is achieved in River State.
But what I'm trying to understand is, having seen what is playing out even before now and at the moment, do you think godfatherism should be encouraged in politics? Because I had to bring that up when because you mentioned about learning from people who have been there before you, and this seemed to be the case in River State between the predecessor and the successor. So do you think going forward should godfatherism be encouraged? Do you think it does more harm than good?
Well, every political character that you see today in Nigeria, when you have a close contact with them, they'll always tell you of their history. Everybody has a history of the individuals that influenced his or her political thought and political inclination and helped him or her to grow up the rather. So in this book I made mention of that you should learn from someone. It mustn't necessarily be someone much older than you, but you should learn from someone who's more politically exposed. But I also believe that in terms of what you define as godfatherism, I do not want to believe that when one is largely instrumental to the success or emergence of say a governor, for instance, I do not want to believe that it is appropriate for you to as is being reported on the news, to be very extreme. We do not know if that is what has happened, but that is what has been widely reported in the news. But personally, I do not condone that, because as an individual, humans at some point will definitely resist. They are resistive when it gets to a point where there is an intention to exert an extreme control over their habits and activities and actions. There's a form of resistance. So I do not, of course, believe that should be the case.
All right, thank you very much for that. We have someone here. Good evening, and glad to have you join us on the show.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Glad to have you on the show. Your name and where you're calling us from. Please, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, my name is Ola. I'm calling from Lagos.
Ola from Lagos. Please, could you tune down the volume of your TV set so we could hear you clearly?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, very well.
Yeah. So I just want to contribute to the topic of discussion
Okay.
On youth engagement in politics and some of the things that your guest has been saying. So I just want to say that there's a place for mentorship, and there's a place for political training.
Okay.
And if you are going to go through that route, we have to go. Any student of history, we look at the way it was done by the founding fathers. I mean, and Nnamdi Azikiwe and others. The way they handle politics as of their period is like they gave that room for people to learn and for you to express and to showcase your talent.
Okay.
At a time when they discovered that this is the way things ought to go, if they will give their direction and they will allow you to perform. But if you look at the politics we have now, look at it from state to state, from Lagos State to Osun State to Benue to Rivers, it's just messy. As a matter of fact, Godfatherism, like you said, has taken over everything. Where is the place of mentorship?
Okay.
Greed has taken over everything. Look at Lagos, the large number of lawmakers, they said somebody should be their leader, and it was voted for. And again, they said, you cannot be our leader again, and they will move in. But the power from above said, no, this is the override. So automatically, democratic institution was tampered with. So automatically, anyone that sees that, and the guy that was asked, that was returned, I'm talking about the current Speaker Obasa. You know, the guy said on national television that since secondary school he has been following the president, has been doing this, has been saying that and all that. Despite the fact that the way he ran into Alushiba with thugs and all that, they asked him to return and remove those someone that has been elected by a large number of people. So what you see there is, you see Godfatherism in place, and any young person that cannot go and prostrate, you know, somewhere, like I said, I started by saying there's a place of mentorship, there's a place of political training.
Right.
Those who are in place, fine. But when it comes to greed and want to be total control, like what has caused problem in River State, and what you have in Lagos State now, the quietness, the quietness you have in Lagos State, like the graveyard, is to
Ola, please round up your thoughts to enable others join the conversation.
Inevitably that until our political leaders, you know, take away this greed and come to the political mentorship and political training, that the younger one can follow suit and come to play. That's what we work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contribution. I really do appreciate. Good evening. Glad to have you join us on the program.
Hello, good evening, Captain TV.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, so happy Salah to you
Yes,
and all the
same to
Captain TV crews.
Thank you very
my
much.
name is Mohammed. I'm calling from Maiduguri. All our viewers of Captain TV are saying that, don't you know today is Salah Day? Why don't you help us dress like a Salah Day?
My apologies.
Do you know, if you have a larger viewer here in Maiduguri, more than I think many places.
Oh, I see.
Now we are also celebrating Salah.
Oh, wow. Okay, no, I've taken note of that, and I'll add accordingly some other time.
No, it's an excellent place. That one is nothing. That is not we are complaining. No, we are not complaining. We just want you to compliment us as well.
Oh, sure, I will.
So, about the issue the old people are discussing. Actually, we all know Nigerian problem is from up to down, down to up. But sincerely speaking, the rate at which the big men or the elderly people don't want to open up for the younger one is really something that has to, it's a concern to everybody.
Okay.
But I don't know, we don't know how this thing, how we can break this jinko, because in population the youth are larger, but we are not united together to understand how we can break that jink. That is the real thing. Otherwise, we can say no of all the political parties, the youth that will be used as political talks, political whatever, billboard and all these things. But coming together to bring in somebody formidable is where we're having these difficulties. I don't know whether you people are able to sensitize the youth in the country. Violent action by youth is something that is bringing the youth strategy down. Any bad thing you see in a youth, anything, will you take the charge? When will they come together and take charge of the affairs of the country. This is another thing.
Okay.
Honestly speaking, you people have a lot of work to sensitize the youth. If you go to Oshodi, you know what I'm talking about. This guy is from Lagos, man. You know what I'm talking about. Where some of them don't even care to go and register.
All right. Thank you, Mohammed. At this point, you have to round up your thoughts so we could enable all of you.
Thank you. Wish us happy Salah too.
Oh, sure, I will. Just stay tuned. I will do so before I sign out. Thank you very much, and have yourself a wonderful evening. Would you want to respond to any of that? Is there something you think that you want to respond to?
Yes. What they are speaking is reality.
Okay.
They are speaking reality, and they are also speaking experience. Which of course you'd be very insensitive to negate the points that they have raised. But like the previous caller just said, he said the youth are more. It's a fact that Africa.
As a matter of fact, the youth have 60% of the Nigerian population. So the youth are really more.
Yeah, but then how do you turn the population to potential and beyond potential to value? So how can population become potential, and how can potential become value? As I said, it is individual action. The government will always do its best to ensure that it curates policies to drive or promote youth involvement. But the young people want to take charge. What do you have to do to take charge? Do you rant on social media? Do you rave on the streets and carry placards? And are you being used as political minions and stooges by the same crop of political leaders that you are fighting against? Or do you want to be politically aware? Do you want to come together instead of fighting yourselves, build yourselves collectively, form organizations and unions, and even engage the government? The government is always willing to be engaged at every point in time. I mentioned to you that, for instance, the Gender Foundation in the next 2 months is having one of the biggest international youth events in Nigeria, holding at the United Nations House on the 17th and the 18th of June 2025. It's called the Africa Youth Conference. I'm sure you were aware of last year's edition, but this time we're bringing in industry leaders. I mean, it's almost related to what we're discussing about unemployment and hunger and poverty, lack of access to skills. About 70 million youths on the continent lack access to basic literary and digital skills. You see, and unemployment is imminent. Within the next 10 years, about 800 million youths aged 18 to 35, employable youth, will be out of the job market, will not have access to to decent jobs. And so how can we leverage on the economic opportunities that are leading in Nigeria, in West Africa, and across the continent? So we are bringing in political leaders, industry experts, policy makers, leaders of youth-led organizations from across West Africa, East, Southern, Northern Africa, to converge in Abuja to see how some of these issues can be discussed, and to also tap into the wealth of knowledge of some of these young leaders who have taken active steps to integrate other young people on the table, and to also engage the government to create more rooms for younger people. When we talk about youth inclusion, it's not just about politics. It's about having youth at the forefront of critical decisions that affect them. So any policy that is taken whatsoever has a large toll on young people, because as you've said, they constitute a bulk of the population. So the African Youth Conference, I'm hoping, for the viewers, that Kaftan has always been part of what we do at the Gender Foundation, that they will follow through and that they will be part of, AYC 2025. UNESCO is hosting it. The African University Incubator Ecosystem, the ECOWAS Youth and Sports Development Center is hosting it. But more importantly, for young people, Nigerian youth, and I'd like them to hear this, who have really bright ideas around the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs are 17, there will be a pitchathon. This pitchathon would give young people an opportunity to pitch their projects that have the qualities of creating jobs for other young people, that have the quality of creating more economic opportunities for young people, and of course accelerating the progress and the efforts made towards the attainment of the SDGs in 2030. They will have an opportunity of having these ideas funded by venture capitalists at the Silicon Valley, and also private investors from other parts of Africa. This is part of our partnership with the African Youth Diaspora Organization, to make sure that AYC is not just a conversation, but it is also an opportunity to network and an opportunity to have your ideas funded. So you see, as an organization, we're not just speaking at the problems, we are trying to create an environment to solve these problems. If the 17 finalists have their projects funded, imagine the toll it will have on the informal job sector in Nigeria, for instance. How many young people will be employed? How many young people will be taken off the street? And the impact it would also have on reducing crime, you see. So action must be taken. Enough of sitting down on social media.
All right. Crime. I was going to bring up that question.
Okay.
There is no doubt that the harder and harsher the economy is, the more it's likely to generate crimes. And year in, year out, you could see that the universities graduate a lot of students, but out there is no job, which now the hardship tends to expose these youths to crimes that in return is a detriment to the country. Do you think the government is doing enough, or do you think the government needs to do more in order to accommodate these minds, rather than the hard and harsh economy pushing them into committing crimes?
I'm trying to understand.
In as much as there is no excuses for that.
I'm trying to understand your question, Mercy. Are you trying to say that do I think the government should do more to create more jobs? Of course. It is the fundamental duty of every administration to see job creation is at the forefront. You see.
Yeah, but still, this same government has come out to argue that white collar job is not for everybody.
That white collar job
is not for
everybody. It depends on your definition of what white collar job is. Are you talking about civil service jobs, or are you talking about working in an industry or in a factory? Whether, I don't know who made that statement, but all I know is that it is the duty of every administration to create jobs, and I do know that the current administration is doing all it can. There are a litany of administration in their tens of initiatives, in their tens and in their hundreds, through SNIDEM, through the Ministry of Science and Technology, through youth development, through digital communications, through the special assistance to the presidents and youth initiatives and all, to ensure that a lot is done. But again, as I've argued, is the impact, weighing the impact as regards the population that we have in a country of about 200 million people, with about 80 people who are supposed to be within the the employable bracket. How many of these initiatives are having impact on them? That is a different argument for another day. But is it the duty of the government? Yes, it is the duty of the government to create jobs. And the more jobs are created, you see that there is lesser proliferation of crimes, because someone who is engaged, except you're mentally deranged, when you have a good job, you have a good family, why would you want to go into the streets and rob? Why would you want to do that? You see, so it is trite. It is a fact that there is a nexus between crime and poverty. You see, so the more the jobs are created, whether blue collar or white collar, then the lesser you see that the security agencies will have less of jobs to see. Whenever you see
even black collar job is a job.
I don't know what black collar is. I don't know what black collar is. Yes. Yeah.
We are discussing youth engagement in politics. David Walker has been speaking with us, and it's been wonderful having you talk to us this evening. Thank you so much for coming. I must say it's been interesting having you, and this is where we draw the curtain. But before we go, just a gentle reminder for those of you who have been listening, and it's been a whole lot of knowledge it's been impactful, their discussion. You would also want to read Before the Next Move by him.
It's on Amazon.
Like you said, it's on Amazon, so you could read it. Nigerian youth can do better. You can get there. We can totally eradicate crime in our nation and our dear country. We can do that. And so we'll come away some other time. Before I forget, and to our Muslim viewers, brothers and sisters all over the world, this is all of us from Govt Television saying happy Salah to all of you, and may the good Lord continue, may the good Lord and good Allah continue to protect and guide you all. Thank you very much for watching Govt TV. Have yourself a great evening.